very,
Yes, we have on in the English speaking world the hashtag representation matters, for example.
Yeah.
And in the Netherlands, that's not really a concept yet, just like white privilege. And
Yeah.
these things are very present in the Dutch society as
Absolutely.
well. I mean,
Absolutely.
we have a multicultural society, at least here in Amsterdam, very much.
Yeah.
And in the yoga studios where I go, there are mostly white people.
Yeah.
You know,
Same.
mostly women, mostly skinny. We have to do something about that.
Yeah.
And because I think yoga actually can do a lot for people who feel marginalized, who are maybe not always in these safe spaces, especially for these people.
Yeah.
I think the yoga mat can really be a safe space. A safe space can really rescue someone.
Yeah. No, and I really think that's also, you got to be there for your community as well. And your community is where you start, you know, like this is another amazing, beautiful yoga teacher that I interviewed a while back called Darish. And he was always mentioning that, like, yeah, the community is where you're going to start, you know, and that's it. Like, your community needs you, and your community is, like you're saying, especially here in Amsterdam, you know, of all colors, of all people, of all, you know, genders, sexuality. I mean, it just doesn't matter, you know?
Yes.
So, and we shouldn't
see
you know?
that, but we should see that in the studios as well.
Exactly. A wider representation of everything and everyone.
Yeah.
That's for
and
sure.
That could mean that you have to look for the models to put on your marketing things and on your Instagram account. I mean, you have to do the work. It's not going to happen by itself.
Yeah.
And I think also what you say, when we can do that in the yoga community, we can also, you know, we can be an example.
Yeah.
We can be a starting point for just a bit more solidarity.
Yeah.
All in different spaces as well.
Yes. Yeah, it starts on the mat and then you take it off the mat, of course. Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Yes.
And another thing that you were mentioning on your Instagram account, which I think is really important, and I think lots of yoga teachers also online that I follow are talking about this, is the spiritual bypassing. So I think it's a really important thing that you.
Oh yes, it was such a an insight for me. I got that from the podcast Yoga is Dead, and then I started reading about what is that actually, spiritual bypassing, and it's an older concept, and it says something about the blind spots you can have. And I think in our yoga communities, what we just said, we don't want to. You know, a lot of yogis don't want to think about the nasty things. We want to live in this space of living, love and light, and like difficult or inconvenient themes like racism or inequality. They're, I just today read someone stating on Instagram, inclusivity shouldn't be a theme because yoga belongs to everyone. And that is so true. But at the same time, it is an issue.
Yeah.
So when you say,
a theme.
we are all one. So what you're talking about, yoga, of course, is for everyone. But the thing is, of course, yoga is for everyone. But we forgot about that. And we are not living that. We're not practicing this idea of unity. So until we are there, we shouldn't just to protect our nice atmosphere. We shouldn't neglect these things. We should talk about it and we should work with it. And I think spiritual bypassing, you can really see it. It's the idea that we don't want to discuss the pain and the monsters under the mats, you can say, just to pretend that everything is fine, but it's not fine.
Yeah, I really like how you described as well, like toxic positivity.
Yes, that's absolutely in line with that. Yeah,
that's so. I really see that too. Like even yoga teachers who have like the yoga voice when they teach, it's like my voice is always the same. Like either I'm teaching or I'm not teaching. It's my voice. It's me. And I think there's truth also that is within, like, I feel as yoga teachers, it's our job to bring satya. Like the practice of truth as well. And truth can be uncomfortable, and it's but. Yeah, this I really think it's a really important point that we should talk more and more about, this bypassing in our communities.
I'm very happy that you say that too, because you really see a lot of people that want to keep the good vibes only.
Yeah.
Yoga is unity. But I think that before we are getting to this like more mystical idea of unity, is of course in the yoga philosophy, you know, in the end we are all one.
Yeah.
I think before we can experience that, I think we should start with just a little bit of empathy, just a little bit of, you know, like a commitment to creating a better world. I think it starts with that. So and that starts with what you said, exactly that, with living truthfully, like facing reality as it is, and from there we can start and creating these safe spaces that we spoke about. So I think this concept of truth is also very important, and I think that in our communities we often see that that this truth is just, you know, it's inconvenient. But we need to face it. That's I totally agree with you on that. Yes.
And the thing is also, like, you know, if you compare what we're saying also with the physical practice of yoga, so with asana, I mean, so many people are a lot of times what I learned in yoga is just be comfortable with the uncomfortable, because lots of asana practice, I mean, it's also uncomfortable to put your leg in your neck.
Yes.
But you find a way to deal with it, you know?
Absolutely. So, to stay, for example, in this hip opener. I really love hip openers, and the way you learn to accept, to live with what is. I mean, you know, hips don't lie, so that's where you find your own truth. And then you discover things about yourself, you know, like old trauma, or like these blind spots, things you've been bypassing yourself because you wanted to continue what you were doing. And that's also a thing that we can do off the mat. Exactly. That's a really nice metaphor. And I really like to use like the yoga asana also as a metaphor for real life. So what's happening on the mat, you can take with you and practice that also off the mat.
Transform it. Absolutely transcend it, transform it. And so you're still a yoga teacher to be, right? You're doing your education at the moment, you're training. So how do you what's the vision for yourself? Like when you're a yoga teacher, what are you going to do with all these beautiful posts and all these thoughts and questions you have?
Yes, that's a really good and tricky question, because now I've been, you know, telling other people how to do it. So now I should do it.
I'm sure you're going to implement it and adapt it
yes,
yourself.
Of course. I mean, let me first say this. I'm not blaming anyone specifically. I mean, it's a structural problem. It's a systematic thing. And it's really not to blame some specific yoga teachers for not doing things, because it's very difficult to make the change just by yourself. So what I try to do with this account is just create some awareness, and to start really like a little yoga revolution.
You do it in a really nice way too. It's really lovely.
I of course, and what I just said as well, I mean, our self-care, self-love is important too, and I don't want to forget that. So as a yoga teacher, I will not sit there and tell people how to live AHIMSA and how to take their experience into the world, etc. But what I will do, and what I've promised myself, is to be welcoming, and to be open, and to be open-minded, and to try to not be defensive when people ask me difficult questions, or when they explain to me that something was uncomfortable. And what I also would really like to do is maybe see if I can work with some other groups, maybe work with older people, or work with people who have some kind of disability, who will need a chair to do some poses. I think that maybe that would be a nice mission for me, to look for other groups. I mean, what we now see often is it's young women. We see also yoga for pregnant women, of course. We see yoga for burnouts, but that's like the things young women deal with. I mean, same here. But but maybe it's really good to see what other problems are there, like arthritis, or you know, there are so many things that the most young women don't suffer from, that can be where yoga can be very helpful. So I want to see if I can find a niche where I can really make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, in that sense, also you're making yoga inclusive again by going to other groups who might not necessarily have access to a good teacher, or not even think about
absolutely, because in the end, inclusive yoga means yoga for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So also those groups that you wouldn't really think of in the first place.
Yeah.
And maybe that when we also create this welcoming space, yes, maybe there are a lot of yoga teachers out there,
Mm-hmm.
but there are still a lot of people who haven't discovered yoga yet.
Yeah.
Because they think, well, it's just for those flexible girls, and I'm not the flexible girl, so I'm going to stay away.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when we break through that and we can show that it's all about being with yourself, reflecting, breathing, creating some space in your mind and in your body.
Yeah.
Well, who doesn't want that? I mean, that's good for everyone.
Yeah. And I think that that's also what I really like about you is you're also sharing like good resources, like for example, you just mentioning Yoga is Dead podcast, which is, I think, an amazing podcast. I mean, everybody needs to listen to it. You were talking about spiritual bypassing, but they also have an episode on white women in yoga, or how they killed yoga. They even talk about vegans killing yoga, and I learned a lot from that. So I mean, they're just an amazing bunch of women that I think are great, and we both also are amazing fans or major fans of Michelle from Skill in Action.
Absolutely. Recommendations. Read that little book on Skill in Action, how to use your yoga practice to create a just world. Yes, I learned a lot from that too.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's also something that I've learned, as a white woman and an ally, like for these groups that are really important to me. I feel like, it's also about, the listening is so important, more than the talking and the sharing is the listening. Like, what are they actually saying? And especially in Yoga is That podcast, a lot of times they give really good advice at the end. Michelle also, besides having the books, he runs amazing workshops and is just a resource on Instagram anyway for people like us. And I think it's really valuable to also, and you've kind of become a resource yourself as well, like within Holland, like what you're doing.
That's why I chose to do it in Dutch.
Yeah.
I think that in the English speaking world, there's also already some awareness, but I thought, well, let's do this in Dutch and create a space for, to create a vocabulary in Dutch as well.
Exactly.
Spiritueel omzeilen, for example, for the spiritual bypassing, we need the words before we can talk about it. We need to accept that we need words to talk about the problem. Toxic positivity, for example, as well. Check your privilege, all these terms we know as hashtags from the English speaking world. We need to talk about that in the Dutch society as well.
I was definitely also like really curious about it, like, who even when I just sort of, who is this person behind this account, because I think it is definitely something, like in Holland there is not a lot of awareness still there, and yoga is still quite young in Holland, and also in Amsterdam. I mean, I was away from Holland for 16 years and I've been teaching for about 8 now, and so I've seen it in a lot of other countries. And when I came back to Amsterdam, I was like, oh yeah, I mean, it's growing now, but it's still, in my opinion, it's not a huge business. And I think that it's good to make people think, and definitely when you do it in their own language, I think you're gonna get there faster,
Yes, I think so too. And I think that, for example, this privilege thing, there's not that much awareness there. And sometimes you still hear these yogis state that life is just what you make of it. You can be everything when you want to. And of course, it's really nice to be positive and to create possibilities, etc. But that's I see that on social media and I hear that in the studios, and then I think, hey, we need to talk about privilege.
Let's keep it real
as well.
Let's keep it real.
Exactly. Let's keep it real, and let's see what is out there, and let's find the words to speak about it.
And I think also you have such a privilege, and that you are also so good with words because of you and your philosophy. So I think it's an amazing skill for you to use, and that's what I love also about that's why I was so attracted also to have you on the podcast, because I'm like, oh my God, she does and philosophy and yoga, woohoo, because
yes,
I think
so maybe that's